The show begins on a typical morning in Tokyo, with various people immersed in their daily routines. Among them is Kayashima, a hairdresser, who is about to board a train while debating whether or not to meet someone important. At the same time, high school gym teacher Sai waits on the train platform, heading to work. She's taken by surprise when she unexpectedly runs into Shirahama, the man she's secretly had a crush on for years. However, Shirahama doesn't appear to recognize her. We also learn that he's waiting for the same train. Shortly after, the train arrives, and all three along with several other passengers step aboard. Everyone is absorbed in their own thoughts, mentally preparing for the day ahead. Suddenly, an earthquake alert blares, triggering panic as several people and belongings vanish without explanation. The train then hurtles into a tunnel at high speed, followed by a deafening impact that violently jolts the passengers, knocking them off balance and sending them crashing to the floor. Some time later, the train finally comes to a halt, and the shaken passengers slowly regain their footing. As they step off the train, they're stunned to find themselves in the middle of an unfamiliar forest. The crowd frantically attempts to make emergency calls, only to discover there's no cell signal. As panic spreads, Shirahama steps forward and introduces himself as a firefighter, reassuring everyone that they're going to be okay. He then moves through the group, checking on each passenger individually to make sure no one was hurt during the incident. Meanwhile, back at the station, the police are baffled to find that an entire train carriage has mysteriously disappeared. They're at a loss to explain how something so large could vanish without a trace. While some suggest the earthquake might be responsible, one of the officers strongly disagrees, convinced there's more to the incident than a natural disaster. Back at the train, Shirahama decides to venture into the tunnel in hopes of finding help. Sai and Kayashima volunteer to join him, and he agrees. The trio begins walking through the tunnel and eventually reaches the other side only to be stunned by what they see. Instead of buildings or a familiar landscape, they're met with an endless desert and rugged mountains stretching into the distance. Shortly after, the trio returns to the train and shares what they discovered, leaving the passengers even more frightened. Many begin to believe they've somehow ended up in another world. To maintain order, Shirahama asks everyone to provide their names so he can create a list of all 46 passengers. Everyone complies except Kayashima, who refuses to reveal his identity. Meanwhile, Sai finds herself impressed by Shirahama and reminisces about the time he visited her school to conduct firefighter training. That was the moment she first saw him and developed feelings for him. Later, a girl named Rina stumbles upon a newspaper article about a murder suspect spotted near the train. Feeling hungry, she checks the bag next to her, hoping to find some food. It turns out to be Kayashima's bag, and all she finds inside are a pair of scissors and a letter from prison. She quickly puts everything back in place and discreetly steals food from another bag. After eating most of the food, she hands the empty plastic bag to Kayashima. Later, the passengers start feeling hungry. So Sai checks her bag to share some of her food. To her shock, she discovers that someone has already taken it, and she demands to know who the thief is. Kayashima is seen holding the food bag, prompting Rina to quickly accuse him. She reveals how she found a prison letter and weapons in his bag, suggesting that he's a criminal. Kayashima denies the accusations, but the others don't believe him, growing fearful. Feeling deeply disappointed, he decides to leave the group and try to find his way home on his own. Later, the group gathers whatever food they have and distributes it equally among themselves. One of the passengers, a vlogger, records everything because of course, there's always one. While reviewing some earlier footage, he catches Rina on camera stealing a bag of food. He quickly shows the clip to the others, and everyone is stunned to realize that Kayashima was innocent all along. However, Rina shows no remorse and insists that she never lied about Kayashima being a criminal. This infuriates Sai and Shirahama, who scold her sharply. Determined to make things right, they then set out to search for Kayashima. Meanwhile, Kayashima wanders aimlessly until he reaches a dead-end ravine. As he examines the area, the ground beneath him suddenly gives way, and he slips, barely managing to grab onto a tree root to avoid falling into the abyss. Just in time, Sai and Shirahama arrive and work together to pull him to safety. Once he's safe, they apologize for not trusting him and for letting him walk away. However, Kayashima coldly replies that he doesn't care, he never considered them friends to begin with. The following day, with no sign of rescue, the passengers grow increasingly desperate. They start to spread out into the forest, each hoping to discover a way back to safety. That day, a high school student shares that he found a discarded can from a product marked with a 2026 manufacturing date. An elderly man named Tanaka mentions seeing the Tokyo Bloom Tower, a building set to be completed in 2026. Meanwhile, a botanist named Kato reveals he identified a plant species that, scientifically, shouldn't exist for another 30 years. Based on these discoveries, the group begins to suspect that their train has somehow traveled 30 years into the future, to a time when civilization has collapsed. Shortly after, an injured man rushes back to the train and frantically explains that he had discovered a cart full of drinks, but someone stole it before he could bring it to the group. Suspicion immediately falls on Rina once again, though she insists she's innocent this time. Despite her denial, the group concludes that the thief is likely one of them, sparking a wave of accusations and tense arguments. Shirahama steps in to defuse the situation and takes the initiative to set up a tarp in hopes of collecting rainwater or morning dew for everyone. Unfortunately, it doesn't rain, leaving the group in an even more desperate state. The next morning, the train conductor catches Tanaka with a water bottle and realizes he's the one who stole the cart. He immediately brings Tanaka before the others and exposes the truth. Tanaka doesn't deny the accusation and instead tries to barter, offering to reveal the water's location in exchange for money. Enraged, Kayashima grabs the old man and threatens to kill him. Terrified, Tanaka insists he was only joking and reluctantly leads the group to the cart's location. Each person is given a bottle of water, lifting their spirits for the moment. However, they all know the supply is limited and they'll need to find a more sustainable source of water. The following day, a small group ventures out to search for a water source. Along the way, they notice frogs and damp soil, hopeful signs that they're nearing their goal. After hours of trekking, Shirahama secures a safety rope and carefully climbs a cliff while the rest stay below. At the top, he finally discovers a fresh stream and excitedly informs the others. However, as Shirahama continues exploring, he's stunned to find a vast sea with Mount Fuji looming in the distance. But something is off, this version of Mount Fuji is unfamiliar, and there's no trace of civilization anywhere in sight. When Shirahama returns to the train, he shows the passengers the picture of Mount Fuji. The sight leaves them stunned. As it confirms their fear, they've indeed traveled into the future. Overcome with emotion, they begin recording tearful messages for their loved ones, unsure if they'll ever make it back. Meanwhile, Sai approaches Kayashima, and they share a heartfelt conversation. During their talk, Kayashima opens up about his life, revealing the struggles he faced raising his younger brother, Tatsuya, after their parents abandoned them. He explains how they relied on each other, but as Tatsuya grew older, he became involved in criminal activity, eventually landing in juvenile detention. Kayashima hasn't spoken to him in 2 years, and Tatsuya is set to be released on the day of the accident. Kayashima shares that the prison letter was from Tatsuya. Moved by his story, Sai tries to comfort him and offers to record a video message for his brother, but Kayashima refuses, and soon her phone battery dies. He calls her foolish, but it's clear he's beginning to develop feelings for her. Meanwhile, in the outside world, the families of the missing passengers gather at the train station, demanding information about their loved ones. Tatsuya is also among them. When he arrives at his brother's salon, he notices flowers left in remembrance. This infuriates Tatsuya, who angrily declares that his brother is not dead. In another scene, Tanaka spots a mysterious figure in the forest and immediately takes off after them. However, he soon returns, having stolen Kayashima's hairdressing tools to continue his pursuit. Tanaka eventually comes back empty-handed, and Kayashima is furious about the loss of his precious tools. The old man explains that he saw someone wearing a cap, who wasn't part of their group, but Kayashima refuses to believe him. This leads to a heated argument between the two, but it is cut short when it suddenly starts to rain. Everyone rejoices in the fresh water, but Tanaka declares that he's had enough and decides to leave the group. The next day, Kato leads a foraging team to assess which wild plants are edible and which are dangerous. Sai and Rina are seen chatting and collecting berries when, suddenly, Sai falls ill and collapses to the ground. It turns out she has consumed a toxic plant that closely resembled edible berries. Fortunately, Sai didn't ingest much, and Shirahama helps her expel the toxins. Kayashima then notices Tanaka lurking in the background, watching the situation unfold. The next morning, the group collaborates to create makeshift weapons for survival. They fashion pots from boxes, craft cutlery out of bamboo, and even sharpen old ATM cards to use as knives. In the evening, the group gathers around the bonfire to eat soup made by the older ladies. However, things take a turn when someone notices a toxic plant in one of the soups. Kato inspects it and realizes it's an edible berry but is puzzled about how it ended up in their soup. Kayashima suspects that Tanaka might have slipped it in while he was lurking earlier, thinking the old man intended to poison everyone but accidentally used the wrong berries. Kayashima wants to confront Tanaka, but Shirahama disagrees and doesn't believe he could be the culprit. This sparks an argument between them, and Shirahama ultimately decides to search for the old man himself. A few hours pass, and Shirahama still hasn't returned to the camp, leaving Sai worried. She decides to go look for him, but Kayashima warns her that it's too risky to go alone and urges her to wait. He teases her, calling her a Shirahama fan, but she denies it. She then opens up about how she first met Shirahama, though he hadn't known about her until the train accident. Meanwhile, Shirahama is seen walking through the forest, searching for the old man. However, he soon falls into a ditch and injures his leg. He calls out for help, but unfortunately, there's no one nearby to hear him. The next morning, Sai decides to search for Shirahama, who still hasn't returned. Kayashima also chooses to join her, but just as they're about to leave, Shirahama limps back to the site. He reveals that he couldn't find the old man but was able to recover Kayashima's hairdressing tools. This makes Kayashima emotional, and he bursts into tears, as the tools were a gift from his brother, Tatsuya. Now, he can use them to make everyone look fabulous. The other two console him, reassuring him that they will find a way home so he can reunite with his brother. Later, Shirahama talks to the group, mentioning that the soil was damp where he was the previous night. He proposes that if there's a river nearby, they could catch some fish. The group is eager about the suggestion and becomes determined to locate the river. Meanwhile, in the outside world, the police are searching for a suspect in a cab who stabbed someone at a train station a few days prior. After reviewing CCTV footage, they discover that the suspect had boarded the same train that mysteriously disappeared. Back in the forest, Shirahama, Kayashima, and Kato are exploring the woods in search of the river. They soon spot a bird, hinting that food might be nearby. Kato moves ahead to investigate, while the others notice a strange man wearing a cap in the distance. Shortly after, they hear a groan, only to discover that Kato has been brutally stabbed. Unfortunately, the culprit manages to flee before they can catch him. And that's where the story ends. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also hit the notification bell to get updated on every video that we upload. Thank you and have a great day.